Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Mompreneur podcast. This is a podcast where the parents, mothers, and entrepreneurs share their journeys, their motivations, and they also share their expertise and secrets with us. And today we have Marcus Chan. He's a top voice 50 award executive member of Forbes, and he never stopped giving his knowledge in B2B sales on LinkedIn. So, welcome, Marcus.
Heem, it's my absolute pleasure. I'm excited to be here.
So, I gave a little bit introduction to the people, but do you want to elaborate more
Sure.
on a little bit about your intro?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. First of all, thank you so much for having me on. Pumped to be here. I'm Marcus Chan, founder of Bentley Consulting Group. I have a high performance coaching and training business for B2B sales professionals and entrepreneurs. I've been doing this for about 18, 19 months full time now. Before going to this full time, I was in corporate America for over I started from the very bottom doing outside sales to getting promoted multiple times, leading major sales organizations of over 100 plus employees, doing quite a bit of revenue before I launched off of that to do my own thing. But it's been an exciting journey, but I'm pumped to be here.
Thanks a lot, Marcus. And what actually motivated you to start something by yourself?
Yeah, so great question. I initially never had the goal to start my own business. That wasn't never really a goal. My parents, when they immigrated to America, they started off as entrepreneurs themselves. They had a restaurant, small business, and I saw how hard it was. So I never wanted to go into that path personally, especially when I was young, because I saw how challenging it was. So I wanted to go get a stable job, work hard, have a career, that type of stuff. So that's what I first went to go do. And I was really fortunate, as I started figuring out myself and learning, having success, as time passed, it wasn't uncommon for people to start asking me questions. And this is about 8, 10 years after I started. They started saying, "Hey, Marcus, how did you achieve this? How did you get promoted 10 times in 10 years? How do you keep
Mm,
winning these sales awards? How are you doing these things?" And I said to
mm,
myself, you know what? Maybe I should do something about that. And people say, "You should write a book." So I actually
mm,
started writing a couple ebooks as a side hustle just
mm,
for fun. And I was making money on the side doing that. I'm like, oh, that's kind of neat. This is back in 2015 or so. I'm like, okay. But it's not very much money. It's like $9 an ebook, and you
yeah,
can't quit a high-paying corporate job for nine
true.
dollars an ebook unless it explodes. But
Mm,
I didn't really see that happening. And what was
mm,
interesting from there is at that point I thought to myself, what else could I build that potentially could help impact more people? And one of the things I found that a lot of people asked me a lot of questions on was B2B sales. Like a lot of people, whether they're on my teams to external, that was a really common question, just the intricacies of being a high performer in B2B sales. So I said to myself, you know what, if I could build at least an online for that, maybe I could just sell some of that on the side. So I took some time. I was traveling quite a bit because I had over 100 plus employees. I was in a hotel room at least 100 nights a year. So I was traveling quite a bit. In my free time, I was building this course out. So I built it out. I launched it. And I woke up overnight making a couple $1,000s. I'm like, wow, that's a huge
mm,
opportunity right there.
mm,
I can make this better. I can scale. I can grow this. I can add more things to it. So
mm,
once I had a proven offer, from there, this is like right beginning of 2019, I started building out, making it even better and better, better, and adding more things to it. And eventually to the point where I knew I could quit my job, but I didn't want to leave immediately because I had some stock I was vesting. I wanted my
yeah.
stock. I wanted some of these things that are going to happen for me
Yeah.
financially. So I made sure I capitalized on that. 9 months later, I quit my job and went all in to do the business. And
Mm,
the reason I decided to really go all in was a few different things. Number one, I wanted to have a greater impact on the world. I knew by working in corporate America, I could
mm,
only directly impact really like my direct teams, but also people within the organization. If I want to make a global impact to impact people on another level, to be able to reach millions of people, I would have to do it on my own. I knew that. The second thing as well, during this whole time when I was building the side hustle out, I also had a kid. And that really changed how I looked at the world. It really did.
yes. Yeah.
Especially early on, I think I was probably a little superficial, chasing titles, chasing money, kind of chasing these things.
Mm,
I was definitely chasing the impact, and those are side effects of it. But you become almost blinded to it, right? So I'm like, I would justify to myself, it's
mm,
okay for me to work 80 hours a week and travel nonstop because
mm,
it's life for our family. And
yeah.
I kind of told myself that story, but having a kid made me realize I was missing a lot of things. like being gone all the time and having a young kid and coming back and missing these things that happen, their first word, taking steps, all those things that are so critical, especially in the early age, I was missing out on. To not be able to, if something happened, my wife was entirely dependent on her to take care of it, and I'm like, oh man, she works full time too. So there was that guilt as well. So I'm like, okay, this entrepreneurship could create a vehicle for me to impact more people, create the life I want, and give me more time back. It could be the right move for me. So I went all in. I bet on myself, and that's why I made that move. And it's been, now at this point, 18, 19 months. It's been an incredible journey. Obviously, ups and downs, as you know, but the highs are so high, the lows are so low. But it's definitely worth every moment of it.
Yeah, and I think you shared with us a very important point about your journey when you were having a kid, and when you had a kid recently, and you were in this state where you have to decide versus number
Mm-hmm.
of hours versus missing the important milestones of kid. How much of having a kid, how much of having a family impacted you and motivated you to start something by yourself? And I know it's not easy, right? Especially entrepreneurship journey is a very lonely journey if you don't have a
Mm-hmm.
co-founder or something. And it's always, when you're a solopreneur, it's always a self struggle within yourself. You are the best, you are your best friend and you are
Mm-hmm.
your worst enemy. I can
Right.
simply keep it like that.
That's
How
right.
much of your self assessment within yourself, how much was that um, family, and the factors about spending time with the family? And I know you don't restrict yourself, you share about your family, you share about your roots in LinkedIn too, and that tells how much of importance do they play in your life. So tell us a little bit about what motivated you. How did family as became your core foundation and motivation to start your business?
Yeah, so it's interesting as I think when I was a little bit less mature, a little bit younger, I didn't realize the importance of family. Like I
Mm,
remember like graduating college, I'm like I'm gonna move away from my parents. I'm gonna go to a different city. I'm gonna start my life. I'm gonna create this whole career for myself. And I was
yeah.
just so focused on the work, right? And I
Mm,
was a little bit. That's how I was raised, just from the cultural background, from my parents being immigrants. We were like, we gotta go work. We gotta have it, gotta have this credibility. We gotta do these things. So at that point it was like work first, family second. That's how it was like
mm,
almost wired into me.
mm,
So it was interesting is as I started to got into a serious relationship with my girlfriend, now wife at the time, things start changing. Your perspective starts changing. Like I was still having success at work and I was working really hard, but opportunities started showing up that would force me to make decisions
mm,
about. So for example, I remember this is 2013, 2014, and I was having a lot of success in corporate America. And the president of the company, major Fortune 500 company, reached out to me, say, "Hey, Marcus, we have this opportunity for you
mm,
because we need someone like you. You've had a lot of success. We want you to become an expat. Like we want you to go to
mm,
China." And
mm,
we want you to live there because you speak the language, you understand the culture, but you
mm,
also understand our company culture. And you are the perfect person for us. It would be an automatic promotion, incredible
mm,
lifestyle, everything, right? But a
mm,
minimum
mm,
3 year commitment. And I
mm.
also knew if by going and do that, if I went to go do that, when I came back, it would just take my career to a whole new level.
Yeah.
So at that point, I had a decision to make, and it was either I choose the career because my wife was not open to moving. She was like, nope. Like she's got a great
Mm,
job. She works at Nike. Her parents live in the same town. She's very close to her
mm,
family. For me, I was like, you know what? I'm close to my parents, but I'm like, I'm okay FaceTiming them or whatever. I'm like, this could be my whole thing.
yeah.
At that point, I had to make a decision, and that was the first time I had to make a decision like that. And I realized myself, it's not worth it.
Mm,
It's not worth it. Like, like it's not worth it for me to, like, I mean, we were married. We're still married. We would find a way to make it work, but it wasn't worth it to be away from the person that I chose
mm,
to marry. We didn't have a kid yet at the time. Like, that wasn't worth it to me. I'm like, that's no job
mm,
is worth that. No company is worth that. So
mm,
that was like the first like inkling of that. And
mm,
then of course, as I started progressing up the career, and I was traveling a lot, and other opportunities to maybe interview for even higher level exec roles that require moving, and
mm,
I turned them down.
mm,
And at that point, in my mind, it started becoming more formulated in my mind how important family is. And
mm.
then once we had the kiddo, it just like put the nail, not in the coffin, if you will. That's terrible, but it really solidified. It really
Yeah.
solidified in my mind how much I really do care about family and how much I really. It was just growing up and experiencing these things. You start learning. I'm like, and then of course, like as things start happening, like I remember, so my kid has a lot of allergies, like a lot of
Mm,
food allergies,
mm,
and my wife would call me, and I'd be traveling, with my teams,
mm,
and I feel like just paralyzed because she's going
mm,
to the ER with my son because he
mm,
ate something we just didn't know he's allergic to, and
mm,
she's with her mom. They're dealing with it. And I'm like, I'm freaking stuck in Seattle, Washington. I can go get a plane, but it'll take me 4 hours to get there at least.
mm,
I hated that. So every time something like that would happen, it was like a sting, and there was
mm,
that guilt because,
mm,
I think it ties into your core values too. And for me, one of my core values is be a good husband, be a good
mm,
father, be
mm,
able to support and show up and be there for them. And I felt
mm,
like I wasn't fulfilling that part of my bargain, my
mm,
values of
mm,
who I expect myself to be. So you start
mm,
realizing like, wow, actually, yes, I love what I do, but
mm,
it's hurting me at the same time. And
mm,
if I have the opportunity to put myself in a position where I
mm,
don't need to sacrifice that,
mm,
why wouldn't I go for it? And
mm,
even though there might be potentially more risk,
mm,
it is what it is.
mm.
The reward is so much greater on the back end. So for
Yeah.
me, that's why family's been so big for me. And it's why I
Mm,
do what I do. It's why I have firm boundaries between work and life, or do my best to uphold them. Because
mm.
if we don't, then we become savages, if you will, and we end up, having this crazy life that makes us unhappy versus creating and designing the life that truly makes us feel fulfilled and happy.
Yeah. And when we come to entrepreneurship journey and especially creating your own business, um, it's not always the glorious side as you see in TVs or videos. And I ask this question to every guest because I want to share your journey, the up and downs of the guests that we have on the podcast, because it's extremely crucial to understand the reality versus the fiction of entrepreneurship. Some people say we entered entrepreneurship because of the flexibility and so on. But sometimes it's not true. You have to put in more work, you have to put in more hours until you reach a certain stage. How was your entrepreneurship journey when you had started the business? And was it really easy as they see, as they show in TVs and movies?
Yeah, so first off, it's not easy. It's very hard. It's really, really hard. Entrepreneurship, is you basically just deal with problems all the time. Right?
Yeah.
Like as an entrepreneur, you are constantly faced with problems. Small problems, big problems, everything. And you are 100% responsible for everything. And for some people, they really struggle with that because depending on their background, like, I've seen some people who are in sales who say, oh, I've been in sales. I'd be great at selling my own, selling something for myself. Well,
Hmm.
true. But what about marketing, fulfillment, customer success, the accounting, doing taxes, managing a managing a hyper profitable business? Like those are things you don't do as a salesperson. So
Hmm.
there are many missing elements. So you are dealt with problems nonstop, and you have to understand that, and that's okay.
Hmm.
But if you understand that, if I'm a really good problem solver, I can constantly solve problems, then it's gonna be fine, right? You just
Hmm.
expect it. Like every day, there's things that happen. Like
Hmm.
this morning I'm working with one of my assistants, and there's some employee issues that we're working through, right? Because
Hmm.
that's what happens. Like you have to deal with that type of stuff. I wasn't
Hmm.
happy about it, but these are problems that we had to work through regardless. So, for me, when I first started, um, because I got to see and grow up in an entrepreneurial environment with my parents,
Hmm.
I'll always say I was mentally trained a little bit, if you will. And what I mean
Hmm.
by that is accepting 100% ownership.
Hmm.
When you work in a corporation, you do have more resources, more help. Like, hey, you know what? If you have issues with your computer, you can call IT. Okay,
True.
like right now, if we have issues with the computer, we call ourselves. We're trying to Google it, we're trying to
Right.
figure it out, right? So
Right.
it's you just do not have all these other resources. So
Yeah.
I grew up that having that basically owning everything, whether it's
Mm.
successful or failure. I owned it, and I
Mm.
had that same concept and mindset even in when I was in corporate America, and I believe it's really helped me be successful in corporate America because whether I had success or I failed, I owned it. And I found
Mm.
a way to solve it. I didn't accept things as they were. I always pushed for more. So
Mm.
when I started my business, I knew that. So I knew that. So I knew being an entrepreneur is going to be hard. I knew it was full of obstacles. I knew I need to have a plan. I knew once I had a plan, I get punched in the face, and I knew I had to be able to adapt and keep going. So
Mm.
it was hard for sure, but I expected it. Like
Mm.
when you expect it to be hard, you're like, okay, this is hard. You know what? Like, posting every day on LinkedIn to generate leads is hard.
Mm.
Filming videos to generate marketing and build brand awareness is hard. It's hard to do all these things. It's hard to have tough conversations. It's hard to do cold outreach. It's
Mm.
hard to, find new customers. It's hard to build a machine. It's hard to build a website. It's hard. These things are all hard to do.
Mm.
But when you understand the hard is worth it at the end, it becomes much greater. And that's why it's
Mm.
so key that, as an entrepreneur, you have to really know what really drives you inside your
Mm.
heart. And it
Mm.
can't be like, oh, what drives me is flexibility in my business. That's not going to be enough. It can't be,
Yeah.
oh, so I make a bunch of money. Okay, that's not enough. It's got to be like something you truly inside your heart you are like it really drives you. You're like excited about. So that
Mm.
way, when you are getting punched in the face, because especially when you first start, 99.9% of your day is crap when you first
Yeah.
start. Like it's just hard stuff.
Agreed.
Like you just have
Agreed.
problems on stuff.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, I'm gonna get my website down. It looks so beautiful. You put it together, and then you publish it. And you're like, why does it look so funny on a phone? Like, why does it look terrible right here? Why are
Mm.
it just things just don't look the way you want? So,
Mm.
but that's okay. So understand and internalize that as part of it. It's not glamorous, but that 0.01% is so awesome,
Yeah.
right? The point one, especially was I think about like someone like for your business, for you, your the impact you're making on the world is amazing, right? You are truly
Mm.
transforming businesses, right? And I love
Mm.
that. So
Mm.
when you have a great offer and you can truly impact lives, it is one of the most fulfilling things ever. Like
Mm.
like even if your day is going to he double hockey sticks, and you're like, oh, this
Mm.
is the worst day ever. But then you
Mm.
you get a message from one of your clients, and they say, wow, you know what? You just helped me with this or whatever. It's like, all right, this is why I do what I do, right?
Mm. Mm.
And when you understand that, that's key. So I always say for entrepreneurs, do your best to not chase the money, chase the inner drive, the
Mm.
impact, the influence you're going to have on the world, and
Mm.
that'll allow you to push through those toughest days that you
Mm.
have as an entrepreneur.
Yeah. And you um, constantly give away the golden nuggets of wisdom, especially for B2B sales. And B2B sales is so hard. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not just, you put and post on Instagram and people can connect and do it. Yes, I agree. B2C sales also is too hard, but B2B sales, it takes a lot of time. And it
Oh yeah.
is truly amazing when you say, hey, I'm a pro in B2B sales and I help my clients, is the game of B2B sales. So I'm going to ask you in a really interesting way this time three realities about B2B sales.
Mm. So three realities, like what's it really like B2B sales?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay, first, you're right. It's really hard. It is absolutely hard. And I'll say it's hard in so many different ways, right? And I'll say, first off, most markets are competitive.
Hmm.
Most markets are very competitive. So a lot of times, if you want to differentiate in B2B sales, you have to do the opposite, right? What
Hmm.
everyone else is doing, do something different, right? To
Hmm.
really capture your market, right?
Hmm.
I'll say it's probably the first reality of B2B sales.
Hmm.
Second, it doesn't happen overnight.
Hmm.
And you have to understand that B2B sales is definitely a long game. It's
Hmm.
definitely a long game.
Mm.
Because reality is you could have, we wish we put a post up or we make one phone call or one email and that person says, wow, that sounds amazing, let's talk.
Mm.
Incredibly rare.
Mm.
Incredible. Even if you have really good brand recognition, incredibly rare. Incredibly
Mm.
rare. Right.
Mm.
So understand it's going to take time, especially if you are a new business and you're out there looking to build up, your audience or build up, your client base. It takes more. You have to have a good process in place to be consistent with it to make
Mm.
sure. Right. Very, very important. And then
Mm.
number three, if you are able to build a really good brand
Mm.
around your business for
Mm.
B2B sales.
Mm.
Ideally, a personal brand. A company brand's good too, but it takes a long time to build a brand like an Apple or Tesla. But a
Mm.
personal brand can actually help you supercharge your B2B sales. Because
Mm.
when you build a really good personal brand
Mm.
across the board, whether it's on social media, you're putting content out there,
Mm.
to getting credibility and being in publications, that
Mm.
consistency of the brand will rise up, and
Mm.
ultimately people will get to know who you are. Because if you think about it,
Mm.
if you are a small business or you're a new entrepreneur, the
Mm.
biggest thing you are fighting against is nobody knows who you are. Like, so you can have the greatest thing in the world,
Mm.
but nobody knows who you are.
Mm.
And that's why it's so key to build a really good brand to market it out there. So here's a really good example, right? So for example, most people think Thomas Edison invented the light bulb.
Mm.
He didn't.
Mm.
He didn't. So I think they originated to Tesla. Actually, Nikola Tesla is actually who actually created the light bulb.
Right.
But Edison was the best marketer. He facilitated the marketing.
Mm.
He put it out there. That's why people associate him with that, right?
Mm.
And that's what happens across the board. Like, it ends up happening that they build that brand, that awareness, and that's how
Mm.
people actually know about it, right? So for a small business, an entrepreneur, or when
Mm.
you're selling B2B, if you can build a really good brand on top of that, you number one, you
Mm.
get more attention, but also, if you are having prospects in your funnel, when they can look you up and Google you and they see that you actually are a real person and you get
Mm.
real results, that will
Mm.
supercharge your results. Because now they're like,
Mm.
okay, you know what? This company is not a fly by night company.
Mm.
Even though they've only been around for a couple of years, it's
Mm.
clear they
Mm.
are legit. There's
Mm.
proof of them around.
Mm.
They're legitimate. If you can't find anything about them online, you don't
Mm.
worry. You're like, that's weird. Why can't I
Mm.
find anything?
Mm.
Are they a fly by night company? Can I trust them? Are they going to
Mm.
take my money and go away? No, but that's why the branding is so key.
Mm.
That will help accelerate B2B sales. Otherwise, you'll be stuck just doing pure cold outreach, and
Mm.
you will have to play a quote numbers game, which will just
Mm.
wear a company out over time.
Okay, that sounds good. Suggestions, I think now we'll go through different types of companies and your suggestions as an pioneer in B2B sales. Okay. So, your sales suggestions for entrepreneurs, for
Yeah.
startups.
So, oh yeah. So a couple of suggestions for entrepreneurs. I think the first thing is if you are an entrepreneur and you are out there and you want to increase your sales, I think number one, double check all your marketing first, your copy. Does it make sense to the person you're going after? That's
Hmm.
really important. And what I mean by that is a lot of times I find, new entrepreneurs, new
Hmm.
startups, they're really
Hmm.
excited, right? They create this really awesome product. So maybe they create awesome software or what it's going to be. They're pumped. They know it's going to change the world.
Hmm.
So they make it sound cooler than it really is, or it maybe isn't that cool, but it doesn't
Hmm.
make any sense to the end user or to the person they're selling to.
Hmm.
So really simplify the messaging so it connects to the
Hmm.
actual person they're selling into. So
Hmm.
that way, especially when you're new, when they hear about your company, they email or your LinkedIn post or your profile or they look you up, they're like, oh, this is exactly what I'm looking for. Like,
Hmm.
so that requires less friction. Okay, that's the
Hmm.
first thing. Okay,
Hmm.
the second thing I would say is, especially when you are new, you definitely need to have way more outreach. Way
Hmm.
more outreach. So what I mean
Hmm.
by that is because no, you're not going to naturally have inbound leads come to you. That takes a little bit of time over time.
Hmm.
So there's really three lead sources. Okay, there's seeds, which are word of mouth. So people will say, hey, oh, you know what? Go talk to Marcus. Go talk to Hema. They're awesome. That takes
Hmm.
time. That takes
Hmm.
time, and we wish we got a lot, but that takes a little time to get the seeds.
Hmm.
Then we have nets. Nets are stuff we put out there, hopefully catch some leads, right? And that could be organic traffic, putting posts on social media, paid advertising. Those are nets, blog posts. People can see it, they can connect with you. It's great. Again, it takes a little bit of time overall, right? Unless they're hyper targeted ads. And then you have spears, which are really targeted. You reaching out to your target market. And that's one of the fastest ways to be able to generate buzz about your business and get your name out there, right? And that could be a mixture between, phone work to emails to direct messages, on any platform. But that's really key. And obviously, a smart entrepreneur will do all three, right? But at the very least, if you have a new offer and nobody knows who you are, you have to start doing outreach ASAP just to get your name out there. And of course, if you can utilize platforms like LinkedIn for organic growth and building up your brand, those two combined will really help. So for example, when I first started my business, I knew what I did in the past was irrelevant. Like nobody cares about my past awards and my success. I'm like, they don't really care. All they want to know is, what do you do now? And can you really help me? That's all I care about.
True.
So
True.
immediately, on social media, I was posting every single day, providing value. And I saw the opportunity in the marketplace. I said, okay, you know what? I look at my competition, other people in the sales training space. Most of them post really fluffy posts that aren't really useful. I'm like, okay, I'm going to post real tactical things so people know I know exactly what I'm talking about. Consistently. So I first started posting, and no one engaged in my post to begin with. No one cared, right? I started hyper targeting them, right? Started connecting with my target market. I started going into where I saw them commenting other people's posts, and I started engaging with them. Right. I started going to these micro pockets on LinkedIn and social media where they were hanging out and I engaged with their comments. So that will bring attention to me. Again, it'll bring attention to me now, right? And then from there, I could do direct messaging, video messaging, etc., and that starts escalating. So I did a combination of quite a bit of that. There weren't really any seeds to begin with, but really a lot of nets. I put a lot of nets out there, and I put a lot of spears out there nonstop. And of course, the more you can do up front, it will pay off in the long run. And it's understanding that. You starting your outbound campaign doesn't mean overnight you're gonna have success. Sometimes, but most times it's gonna take a little bit of time, right? And then if you do a good job with everything else, you'll continue to compound the success. But the thing is, never stop. Never stop. That's the key. The mistake some people make is, oh, you know what? We had a really good month. We hit the revenue targets. Now it's gonna keep going every month. No. As an entrepreneur, every single dollar you bring in, every single piece of cash you bring in is so vital. It's so vital. And you need it you got to earn it every single month.
Yeah.
It's not guaranteed. You got to go get it every single month, right? So that's why you can never stop. Like every day, I prospect still. Every day, my team prospects still. Every single day still, nonstop. Because you can't control the market, but you can control how you react to the market.
Right, right. And I think that's a very strong and powerful way to say it, Marcus. How about your suggestions for companies who came out from entrepreneur? They started to make the revenue, but they want their target to be in Fortune 500. What they have to change in terms of B2B sales? Any suggestions for them?
Yeah. So there's going to be a couple different things, right? So you'll definitely need an outbound campaign, right? Which is going to be key. Eventually, you will have to do you'll need more traffic. You get a point where you need to have more traffic and more eyeballs to get your name out there, right? And that means, whether it's going to podcasts, to paid traffic, using advertising on Facebook, LinkedIn, etc., SEO searches, Google ads, etc. You need to start doing those things as well because it's going to help bring more traffic. That's the first piece. The second piece is you have to have systems in place. So as you grow and scale, you get to a point where if you don't have systems in place, like you can't do everything. You just can't. You get to a point where revenue-wise, responsibility-wise, team-wise, you can't be the person who's always telling people what to do.
True.
Like you need to have systems in place. So you need to have SOPs, standard operating procedures, documented down and broken down. So I would really recommend as you are scaling to that point from one person to 2 to 5 to 10, 20, you start having SOPs put into place. So for example, for my business, we have SOPs mapped out for everything. Like I've mapped everything out, and we're constantly adding new ones as well. So as like as we get market feedback to something that we're doing, okay, that's not working anymore. Okay, I'll message, I'll Slack my assistant, say, hey, listen, based on the feedback you just told me, I want you to go and change this SOP. So that way we on the spot. So we keep all house. We use Asana. We house all our SOPs in there for every part of our business. So that way, when we have new people coming to our company, they can go through. They can read the SOPs. Now I take it next level. I do record. Record a training for it. So I do train. I do a recorded training on there. Throw it in there. So that way they can watch the training video and have step-by-steps in there as well for those specific SOPs. So, and the reason that's important, that allows you to duplicate yourself. So when you build these assets, you can start duplicating yourself. So as you are continuing to scale up and you get bigger and bigger and bigger, as you're hiring more people, you need to have more processes in place. So you have a common language and a common bond for people to go and follow and execute on. So that allows you, as you start bringing in, more and more people, middle management, etc. They have a system as well. They have a system as well. But again, all the stuff you have to have a system in place. Otherwise, you see a business get capped, right? And I'll give you a good example, right? So when I was a sales manager, I ran the P&L for the whole business. And I remember like going from having a team of 6 to 20, right? That meant I suddenly had to have more processes in place. And then from there, I got promoted to a new level role where I suddenly had 85 employees and multiple levels in between. And then I realized I didn't have any SOPs in place. So I had to build new SOPs for that allowed me to have scale and repeat. So I want to constantly repeat myself nonstop. It's like, hey, here's how we do things. So then you have set criteria, and you are essentially building a machine that can run even when you're not there. But you can't do it without having key core systems and SOPs in place. But as you start doing that, then you start expanding more and more and more. But it's also what's really important too is as you bring each person in, the how you hire is also key too. Because you need certain people who can really help you run the machine. So I think going from even 1 to 2 people, like I think I only have 3 people on my team, or 2 people on my team. I'm 3. So if you go from 1 to 2 people, that person's now 50% of your company. Okay, so and then that's a lot of responsibility. Then you have 33%. So the more system you have in place, the more they can jump onto the system and execute the machine. Right. So that's key as you continue to go up. You have to have these pieces in place, but you have to have the right hire too. The wrong hire can really impact your growth as well. So you need a combination of the right hire, the right systems. If you have the processes and the people in place and you have a good plan, your chances of success are significantly higher. Now, you'll probably get to a point eventually where you probably will need to have funding, et cetera, potentially to get to the next level, unless you are an exceptionally cash-rich company. So depending on the profitability, you may need that as well to get to the next level too.
I think, again, amazing points and golden nuggets of wisdom as usual, Marcus. Thanks a lot
Appreciate
for
it.
today's podcast, and thanks a lot for sharing the value of embracing both parenthood and entrepreneurship and sharing the real pain and gain of going through the journey. Thanks a lot and have a great day ahead.
Thanks so much.